Welcome to Let's Talk Near Death, the podcast show where we talk about life, death, and experiences somewhere in between. I'm Kirsty Salisbury, the host of the show, and join me as I talk to everyday people with not so everyday experiences. Let's talk near death.
Climb out, get to about 10,000 feet, and we have a malfunction on the outboard left engine. You won't believe how much goes through your head when you think you've only got about 2 or 3 seconds left. My soul left, and I'm outside the airplane, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. Boom! I am standing in the black void, and I am seeing the most beautiful thing in existence.
Today I'm talking with Tony Woody, a Navy veteran who served for over 20 years as a flight engineer on the P-3 Orion aircraft. Tony began his flying career in his teens and experienced a massive life-changing event following an emergency landing in 1981. Tony, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Can you tell us where you're based and how your journey started?
I now live in Exeter, New Hampshire. It's a little small town in the southeastern corner of New Hampshire, not far from the seacoast, about 40 minutes north of Boston, just across the northern Massachusetts line and southern New Hampshire line. I started flying at 19 years old. I got sent to my first squadron, and I asked the skipper what it was like to fly in one. He said, "Come with me and I'll show you." And that day he took me up, and the next thing I know, he tells me to get in the flight engineer seat. The other engineer gets out. And of course, they don't leave a know-nothing nugget up in the flight station in the center seat of a 70-ton, 4-engine airplane. But next thing I know, right before takeoff, he tells me to get in the seat, and I'm the guy pushing power levers. I couldn't believe I was doing that. Literally 2 hours before that, I was selling hot dogs for the squadron in the squadron snack bar when I asked this question.
It's a bit different then, isn't it?
I mean, we get in the air and the skipper smacks me on my leg and says, "By the way, son, you know you could do that job?" And that was all I wanted.
That was it from there, was it? Just straight off?
Yeah, that was it.
So tell us about your journey from there. What led from selling hot dogs to jumping in the seat to your NDE?
Yeah. So I got a few hours under my belt by then, and I'd been flying for about 6 years or a little more, 7, something like that. I don't know exactly, but I had about 3,500 hours flight time by then. So I was a pretty experienced engineer. I was an instructor by then, teaching others, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so I got sent to Barbers Point, Hawaii. And while I'm there, they have every 2 years in the even year, they have a huge military exercise. It's the largest exercise in the world. Australians, New Zealand's involved, Japan, you name it. There's a lot of countries, Canada, the United States, whatever. And it's the biggest military exercise in the world. And it was my crew's turn to go fly a mission to support that exercise. And so we took off, and we were fully loaded with fuel, about probably 139, close to 140,000 pounds when we took off. Climb out, get to about 10,000 feet, and we have a malfunction on the outboard left engine, which is the number one engine. We had to shut it down. So we declared an emergency, came back heavy because we have all that fuel on board. And so we had to dump what we could. You can't dump everything that you want, only a certain amount. And then just the way the system's set up. So then we had to fly around for half an hour to burn down to max allowable land weight. If you land too heavy and too hard, when you're heavy, you can structurally damage the airplane. It'll never fly again. So you got to pay attention to the rules. So we did that. When you declared an emergency and you come in to land, they pre-position the fire trucks on the side of the runway, literally right on the side of the runway at an angle. So when you go past them, they'll pull right in and chase you, right? And then further down, there's a couple more, and then they'll pull in behind those two and so on until you get to the other end of the runway and stop, and everybody says, "Okay, nothing's wrong, or I'll go back home." Typically, that's what you really want, and that's a good thing to have the fire trucks there, but that day, it was a problem. And when you have an engine out, first of all, let me tell you kind of a couple other things. We were coming in way faster than normal because we were heavy. To give you an idea of the difference in weight, we would normally land after a mission with 8,000 pounds of fuel left. We still had 42,000 pounds of fuel on board. So you got to go a whole lot faster to keep that weight in the air. Yeah. So when you touch down, things are happening much quicker than they usually do. And when you're that big of a plane, it takes, and your extra speed takes exponentially more distance to stop. It just gets worse with speed, right? And so you expect to swerve to the right because you've got two engines pulling on this side and only one over here. So you're gonna have that happen. It's just natural. So you brief that on the emergency landing brief. You say, okay, we're going to correct that with left rudder to get us back on center line. That's just what you do. Briefed it, all of that. And for some reason, I still don't know why, the pilot started putting in incorrect rudder. I didn't realize that at the time. I thought we were just doing the natural thing to the right and he's going to correct. That's not what happened. He pushed harder thinking he was correcting, and he was actually inducing the swerve. And the next thing I know, we are departing the runway, and we're headed directly at one of the fire trucks.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I had death coming at me at over 135 knots. That's over 155 miles an hour. And there was absolutely nothing I could do about it.
Did you know, were you able to process
I knew that right wing was going to slam into that fire truck, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. It was happening too fast. You won't believe how much goes through your head when you think you've only got about 2 or 3 seconds left to think at all. And all I cared about and thought about was my son, my family. Starkly brings into perspective what really matters in life. And right about that time when I had terror, just terror, all of a sudden, I'm outside the airplane.
Had you hit?
I'm outside the airplane. My soul left, and I'm outside the airplane, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
I'm having two perspectives at once. I still have the me in the seat who's feeling all this terror, and everything slowed down. All of this happened at once. It was this change of just the way time was flowing. I don't know how to explain it, but it all changed. Super slow motion, amazing attention to detail, but everything felt like it was happening in real time, but it was my awareness level was immense. I mean, I just could absorb so much more about what was going on and seeing and feeling. But the me outside was totally calm. Like I was just an observer. I wasn't invested in this in some way, anyway, especially like the other guy that was in the seat that was terrified, clearly invested in this situation. But the me outside was like I was watching a YouTube video or something. I don't know. It just didn't seem to be urgent, or it was just observing. But it was awareness that was beyond reason or what I'd ever experienced before. And everything I started focusing on, I could, for instance, my concern was the airplane's going to slam into the fire truck on that side. Well, the first thing I started focusing on outside was the propeller and the engine and on that side. And I saw the right wingtip go over the top of the fire truck I could see the guy in the silver suit on the top with the water cannon screaming. I could see his face screaming at the top of his lungs. Never did talk to him later. I wish I'd done that. He was a Hawaiian guy. I still remember his typical Hawaiian, features. Anyway, I've thought about that before. But the me could see the number 4 propeller blade now think about this. This thing's moving forward at 135 knots. It's spinning at 1,020 rounds a minute. It weighs 2,200 pounds, and it's 13 feet in diameter from tip to tip. All right, that's how big this engine propeller is. And the blades, I don't know how to do this. The blades, like that's the corner of the truck. First blade, there's 4 blades, but only 2 of them did this. First one barely missed the front corner. And as the plane's moving, the second one passed the other back side of that corner. And I could see that. I could see it clearly. I watched it frame by frame. I had no idea how I could do that. I didn't understand what was going on. I was glad it didn't hit the plane, but I'm just fascinated watching all this. And then me in the seat started seeing, because now we're not on the runway, right? We've missed the truck, and now we're leaving them in the dust, literally. And because we're now in an area that planes don't go. So over time, you're going to get some tiny debris, dirt, dust that builds up there that's not getting blown away by the airplane engines anymore. I mean, they're just not out there. So you're going to have that build up over time. Well, now we're blasting it all in the air. And so I don't know where this thing came from, but there was a Pepsi can that came from somewhere, and I saw it flash from left to right, probably just like that quick, right? That blur you just saw. But me in the seat saw this Pepsi can, 12 ounces. Oh, that's a Pepsi can. I can see the fluid fly out of it. And I watched the fluid atomize. And I started, wow, look at all that fluid atomize. And then I'm where all the fluid is. And the me outside started paying attention to that too. And it all just expanded and became more. And anything that was in the air, I knew where it was. I knew where it had been, where it was, what it was doing, where it was going, where it was going to stop before it did that. I just knew that. I just knew all of that. I don't know how to tell you that, but it was very confusing. Nobody's ever, nothing in my training manual ever prepared me for anything like that. And so as we're doing that, we're still going across the asphalt between the 2 runways, and we're headed toward the other runway. So remember, it's parallel runways, and I landed on the left one. 040 was the heading. By the time when we finally stopped, now the me outside is seeing all this from above too. I could see all the fire trucks turning around trying to catch up. We left them way back, but they're hurrying up trying to catch us. And by the time we got stopped, we went half on, half off the other runway, and we're stopped. And the instant the plane came to a lurch with the brakes and all that. By the way, as we're going across the asphalt, I remember Lieutenant Duffy is in the right seat saying to Lieutenant Lovegren, get on the brakes. Nothing happens. Get on the brakes. A little louder. Nothing happens. You better get on the effing brakes. And he just yelling at him. And that's when he finally woke up a little bit and got on the brakes, and we started stopping. And when we finally got stopped, at that point, all of these different fractured consciousness or pieces of out there, wherever I had the awareness where all these different debris pieces were and everything, it just all pulled back into me sitting in the chair all at once. As soon as the plane stopped, it's like there was no sound, but other than the engines running.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like. And I don't know what happened to me. I had never heard of anything like that. I didn't understand it. I'm dumbfounded. I'm in shock still. And I look over at Lieutenant Duffy. I still don't know if I said it out loud or I heard his thoughts and he heard mine, because it was such a surreal moment. I was so rattled after that I wasn't sure what was real anymore anyway. And but I thought I asked him, did you see that? Because I didn't know how to word that, what that was, I mean, it was so raw. I didn't know what to say other than that. And I thought he said, like, yeah, or like, are you crazy type? Yeah, of course I did type. Yeah. You know what I mean? But right after that, before I could figure out whether we actually talked to each other, or did we just trade thoughts? And I'm looking at him eye to eye, and then I hear this woo, woo sound, right? And so Duffy's eyes go over my shoulder to look at the other pilot who's making the noise, and I turn my head to the left. He's still in a shock. I could tell. He's white knuckling the yoke, and I had already come off my adrenaline rush, and I felt like I just ran back-to-back marathons. And then I watched Duffy when he came off his, So now I'm looking at Lieutenant Lovegren, and he's still on his, and he's just squeezing that yoke, and he's trying to say something. He can't get it out. He finally says, what the F did I do wrong? It's just the way his voice was shaking, and he was in shock still. You could hear it, and I just couldn't believe all this was just happened. And I still don't know what happened. And about that time, all the fire trucks caught up to us, and we figured out nothing was wrong with the plane, and we ultimately taxied off and went back to the hangar, and I went home. But before I went home, I checked the flight schedule, and I was on the flight schedule for the next day. And the skipper already had the pilot that gooned the landing. Good pilot, loved the guy, but he didn't do that very well that day. And but the skipper, who was an instructor pilot, they both were. So that tells you how good he was. They don't give you instructor status if you don't know what you're doing. And but he just made a mistake. But the skipper took him out again, and I'm with him. And I never considered that. It's never crossed my mind that I would have a problem in the air or anything. And so we get in the air after takeoff. I'm just thinking, oh yeah, I'm going flying again. I'm on the flight schedule. I've done this before. But on the first approach, I'm seeing the same view I had the day before when I was making that approach before we ran off the runway. And I did not understand. There was no such word or term as post-traumatic stress back then. That didn't exist. And today they'd never do this. Have an incident like that one day and then put you back in the plane the next. No, you're going to go get psych evals and all that stuff to see how you're doing. But back then they just put you back on the horse, see if you could ride, Well, the problem is I'm struggling with the horses bucking. It's a bucking bronco today. I'm barely hanging on. And so I couldn't look outside, but I didn't want my skipper to know, because he's sitting right next to me. If I didn't want him to see my face, because I knew he knew there's something wrong with me. And so I leaned forward. And one of my jobs as a flight engineer, if you have to wave the plane off for any reason, maybe a truck or a dog or a deer or something on the runway, you never know. Stuff happens sometimes. So my job is the guy that shoves the power levers up. So I bent forward and put my hands on the power levers so that my skipper can only see the back of my head, because my head's down and in front, right? To acting like I had my head in the game and that I was doing my job. But I didn't have my head in the game. I was terrified. And I had to get through that. It took several landings before I finally talked myself out of that and said, Tony, you've done thousands of landings. You're going to be okay. Whatever I told myself, I finally got through it. And after that, I was okay. And I never had that problem again. So the next day is Wednesday. And I know this sounds unrelated, but I know in my heart it's not. And I don't know how they're connected or why, but somehow that incident on the airplane where I had the out-of-body experience had opened some sort of door that I don't understand at all. Back then, I had no clue I did that or that happened. And so that's now Wednesday night, and we're at home, and I'm watching a television show that used to come on back in the 80s called That's Incredible. Yeah. And I think Kathy Lee Crosby and Frank Gifford used to host that show. And they had this particular episode on about a guy named Leslie Lemke, Lemke. And you can still find the video of this on YouTube. So just Google YouTube his name, you'll find it. And so we're watching that video. And it's about this guy this elderly woman was on there saying, I was told in a dream that I was going to be offered 3 babies to adopt, and I'm to take the baby boy that's blind. And that actually happened within whatever time frame she was told. And she did that. Well, it turned out the boy was not only blind, he had no cognitive skills beyond that of a 1-day-old his whole life. Mm-hmm. All of his life. Doesn't speak, nothing like that. And so they brought him on, and she's telling her story where she had heard music in the middle of the night, and she thought the radio or TV was on. She goes downstairs to turn it off, and here's Leslie sitting at the piano, playing the piano perfectly, singing music, gospel music. And they brought him out on stage after that, introduced him, but he's not talking to anybody. He's clearly not aware of what's going on around him. wasn't talking at all, nothing like that. They set him down in front of the piano and he started playing. And he had what I called a hauntingly holy voice. It just penetrated my heart, and I knew I was seeing a miracle. I'm thinking I'm seeing my first miracle. I didn't understand everything's a miracle back then at 24 or 5 years old, but I'm thinking I'm seeing my first miracle. So I'm very grateful for that. Just was. And I said a simple prayer of genuine gratitude that night before I went to sleep. It was just a little 10-second prayer. I said it in my head, don't really expect a response, but we do those little prayers anyway, right? And what I didn't realize was that I had asked for a miracle. And I found out decades later that the reason that happened and was granted is because the call compels the answer. I'll talk more about that in a minute. But so I had called out for a miracle, not realizing it. And I said the simple prayer when I went to sleep of just genuine gratitude. Can't remember what those words were in my head, but it was real. And I could feel it in my heart. And then I said, Lord, it'd be nice if you could do something like that for me someday. Careful what you ask for. You're probably going to get it. And so I went to sleep, didn't think anything of it. In the military, we used to call the middle of the night when you had to go pre-flight, like in 3, 4 in the morning. We called it "Oh Dark 30." So it was "Oh Dark 30," and I didn't have a tunnel experience like people who say when they have a death, when their heart stops or whatever. I didn't have any of that. I actually never ever got injured at all, and so that's what's unique about mine. Is not unique. I think that's happening a lot. It's just people hear the word near-death experience and they think, well, you didn't die, so it's not real. Wrong. You don't have to die. If God wants to come take your consciousness and yank it out of this dimension to another one, there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. Okay? Just nothing. It doesn't matter if you're dead or not.
So many people telling me about situations like this. So many people saying that I've had this experience, but I didn't die. But it's very, very similar to a near-death experience. And what do I do with that? So, yeah.
Exactly. I'm glad you said that, because that's going to lead into where I'm going with this is what do I do with that? Yeah. And that's exactly the point. But instantaneous shift in consciousness of my location, there was no tunnel or anything like that. It's just from a dead sleep, right? Deep sleep, boom. I am standing in the black void, and I am seeing the most beautiful thing in existence. And I know it. I'm in the presence of my Creator, and I know it. You can't not know that when you're there. I don't care who you are. Now, I understand what it means about being humbled in the presence of that being. Everybody is going to feel that way there. Not out of fear, just out of reverence and respect for what you're part of, literally. And I was just blown away. I was in the black void, which I later learned is called the Great Silent Chamber. There was no sound whatsoever there. None. Now think about it. When do you ever really have silence here? If you go in a quiet room and there's nothing moving, nothing running, it's just you and you're meditating, what do you hear? Breathing, heartbeat. It's never silent here. Ever. There, God has perfected silence. Nothing God does is not perfected. That's his whole focus, her whole focus, God's own focus. It's not a he or she, it's both, it's all. I don't know how to express it. I don't know how to do that, but I use words that only humans use to try and express something I don't know how to express. But so please don't anybody think I'm trying to call God one gender or another. I don't know. All I know is what I experienced. And the power was immense power. It was infinite power. the first things first thing you know is the love. It's just unconditional love on a cosmic scale, and it is pouring out in all directions, and it's nonstop, and it's forever. And I was dumbfounded. I was just dumbfounded. I couldn't even think. It's so overwhelming. You can't even think. It's not like I was just in the way of all of these waves of energetic emotions coming from God's heart, expressing, and it seemed like personally, directly to me as an individual. It's like God took infinite unconditional love, infinite wisdom and intelligence, which are one and the same. You can't have one without the other. And infinite unconditional, or rather infinite power, were all perfectly balanced. But God was doing that with half a thought in the background because he was throwing a cosmic scale party because Tony's back. He's here, look, he's here. It was all about, that's what it's like. And so I don't know how God can do that, totally focused on one individual while doing everything else. But God can. And I was just dumbfounded. And I said 3 words, just came out instinctively. I said, oh my goodness, just in dumbfounded awe of what I was seeing, feeling, and experiencing. And the instant I said the word goodness, I call it the signature of goodness. It was specific. It was meant to tell me, here's your goodness, all your goodness. Because I said, oh my goodness. Guess what? I made another call. The call compelled the answer, and I got it. That's how it works. And I didn't understand that at the time. It took me well over 30 years to find those answers after that. But I didn't know any of that. And then right after that was the essence of joy, bliss, goodness, peace, ecstasy, harmony. Anything like that is constructive, positive, loving, kindness, all of that. Each one had its own signature of intent coming and expression coming from God's heart, blasting through me. Man, that was the only thing. The only thoughts I could have there were those 3 words. Oh my goodness! The rest of it was wow, and no ability to think at all. It's impossible. And then I had what I call the urge to merge. There's this moment where you just, that's all you want. Go deeper into the light. I just want to go home. And I was home. By the way, there was this signature of home. I was home. I was finally home, and I knew it. I did not want to leave. No, never. I've had everything I'll ever need. And then I saw these hands peripherally out there, and I didn't understand that, and I didn't care. I was just, all I wanted was to go into the light. And it was so graceful and beautiful, and the way it moved. I didn't know how to, I'll talk about that in a minute. We'll get back to that. I was just blown away, said those 3 words, all the other energies went through me. I saw the hands, and then as that happened, the rest of my bedroom started kind of fading in as it wrapped back around me. You know what I'm saying? Just kind of came into view peripherally. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I could tell my wife by the nature of how the sheets and blankets and stuff were in it, that she had her back to me, her feet. I could tell she had her back to me. And there's no wall at the end of I had sat up in bed, and the hands that were out there were mine, and I didn't know that at the time. Realized it after the room came back in, and I realized I was still looking at the wall and could tell where my wife's feet were, and their back was to me. And I remember thinking, how can she be asleep in here? Because it's like 1 billion stars in here. I don't know how anybody can sleep. And then I realized I was sitting up and I was awake. My face was wet. I didn't know that till later, but I was like, this is real. I mean, I realized the wall that was gone and the light that was in was God in my bedroom, and I knew it, and I wasn't asleep, and I knew that too. And so, and that's about the, and I think God did that for a reason, because God knows me. I'm an engineer, you know. I have to know it's not, that there's no other way it could be other than real. So if there's anything that could convince me, like if I had not actually woken up and been sitting up and I just woke up laying down, I'd think it was a dream and I'd write it off that way.
Yeah.
I wasn't allowed to do that because I didn't go back to sleep. Okay, I'm sitting up and that happened, and then the light went away. It just shrunk from the outer edges down. It's about 10 feet, you know, end of the room was gone, and it just closed. And that's when my heart broke, because I just lost the greatest love I'll ever know. Just got ripped away from me. I didn't get any answers. I didn't get a single word spoken to me. I didn't get told why it happened. I didn't get told why I couldn't stay. I was told nothing like that. And I'm sitting there with this tears going down my face, and it's still dark outside. And there was this undulating energy still moving around in the walls, like a faded light. It was really strange looking, but I knew it was the light. And I just begged and prayed that it would come back. That was all I kept saying. Please come back. Please come back. Please come back. Please come back. All night. Just wanted to come back. My wife wakes up, the sun comes up and it fades away. And she sees me and she's like, what's wrong with you? You know, and I don't have a clue how to answer that question. not just somehow I got through the next couple of days at work. I don't remember if I flew or not. I don't remember any of that. It just, all I could think about was getting to Sunday, because I wanted to go to church and find out what happened to me. That was the only place I knew to go. I had never heard of this, didn't understand it. What was that? You know, what do I do with it? There's your question. What am I supposed to do with it? That's exactly what I needed to know. What am I supposed to do with this? Why did it happen to me? What happened to me? What happened to me in the airplane? I needed answers, you know, and I had nowhere to go. So I went to church, and afterwards I went up to the pastor. It was a guest pastor. It wasn't our typical one. I think our other one was on vacation or something that week. And I expressed everything to him. Although I cried, I was able to get it out. And I know he understood me, because we were face to face, eye to eye. And he just kind of tilted his head and looked to one side and looked at me a little odd, and just turned his back on me and walked off.
Seriously.
And I'm like, what just happened? You know, I needed help and I didn't get it. I got rejected by the church. I felt like I just got rejected by God, because I didn't get told when I get to stay 4 days ago. And now I just got rejected by this guy. But I didn't give up. So the following week, I went to a different church with my family. And so my son's 3 years old, so he's back in the nursery area. So we're out in the congregation in a much bigger church. And, but it was my first time and only time there. They had this moment where they would, for church concerns, you know, that people could offer prayers up and that kind of thing. And so I needed answers. So I don't care. I'm going to stand up and ask, you know, and I'm trying to get up, and my wife knew what I was going to do. And I'm crying because I can feel the emotion. It was a long time before I could tell any of this without being so emotionally overwhelmed. I just cried. So I'm trying to get up, and she's grabbed my arm firmly, and she's literally yanking me back. And I pulled my arm off. I said, let go of me, you know, and the whole church is seeing this. And then I said what I needed to say, and I got a lame answer from the pastor that I knew wasn't real, because I knew what was real. And so I kind of just left the church. But out in the parking lot, this lieutenant commander that I had seen before on the base but didn't really know him, he was in a different command or something, kind of came up to me, and he didn't give me an order or anything like that, but he told me his probably not a really good idea if you keep talking about that, if you want to keep flying in the Navy or stay in the Navy, because they don't mind praying about God as a group in the military, but the instant you start telling them you've been there, done that, stood in front of your creator, they're not going to let you stay in anymore, And so I learned quickly, not only from the military side, but my family, everybody, just the church, just shut up about it. Mm-hmm. And that's what I did. I didn't know what else to do. And that doesn't work out either, because anybody that happens to, you are changed. And you might suppress it for a while even, but it's going to come out in some way, and you've got to go find out your answers, or it's going to drive you crazy and you're going to have a lot of struggles. Those are the after effects of a near-death experience, or a near-death-like experience, or any spiritual experience. They're overwhelming, they're powerful, they're life-changing, and they need to be validated. And they're not being validated. But I'll get into that in a minute. But so after that happened, I just kind of got away from everything and did my own thing and finished my military career. Kept looking, seeking for decades, wanting to understand and learn. And that's when I heard about communities of people that are getting together and doing what you're doing and all of that. So I started stepping out, because I'm not in the military anymore at that point. So, I can say what I need to. And I still needed answers. And so I started seeking again and speaking up more about it. And I ended up becoming a speaker about it. And it just kind of led to this. And when I did that, one of my videos that was out there, I talk about still seeking, and that I had not found the truth yet, because I knew the standard when I was there. And so I kind of knew what I was looking for. And this lady named Lilia calls me. And she goes, "You're probably going to think I'm crazy." I'm like, "Yeah, probably no crazier than my story, but go ahead." I know crazy very well. And it's not. It just is. I just know too much. That's all. People like us, you've been there, I think, right? We just know too much. And that's fine for people to be skeptics. I don't mind. I was too, probably for a while, but not anymore. And so Lydia got in touch with me, and she said the reason she contacted me was at one point in the video, I talk about still seeking. And she said, "I think I've got what you're looking for." And she introduced me to the St Germain Foundation and the St Germain Press. That's Germain. I had never heard of that. I didn't even know who St Germain is or anything. I never heard of any of it. Mm-hmm. But she introduced it to me, and I started learning about it. And they sent me the books. They have these books that are called Unveiled Mysteries, and the Unveiled Mysteries, the Magic Presence. That's what we're talking about. And the I Am Discourses. And what they are instructions on how to connect with these beings. Yeah. So I started reading them, and I started having experiences happening again and doing the decrees that they talk about and how to use them to call on these higher spiritual beings to aid us and just guide us and show us the path to enlightenment, and not enlightenment, but ascension. This is about our soul. Everybody, whether we understand it or not, we're spiritual beings, and we're trying to ascend to go back home. And I know home. So I started studying these books, and I started having experiences that I can't explain any other way. And it's just been amazing to watch my life unfold and know what's going on, and know that that's divine action, God in action, overtly acting in my life.
These experiences that you're talking about, are they similar to what you experienced with your outer body?
One of them was very much so. Yeah. I was getting a massage from my massage therapist that I'd known for a couple of years by then, and we become friends and talk when we, she's working on me. And she was 7 months pregnant. And I started telling her about these books that I'm telling you about. Yeah. And remember when I told you about the light when I was there and how it was different and the colors and all that? And I'd never seen these words used before in anything I'd ever read for 30 plus years and thousands and thousands and thousands of books of seeking. Okay. Just because I wasn't talking to anybody doesn't mean I wasn't seeking for 20 years. I still did. But this time I found the words that describe the light in the black void, called the black void, the great silent chamber. Mm-hmm. That got my attention because of the silence, the perfected silence. I told you, I knew that was real. So I'd never seen that written anywhere about the great silent chamber. And then the words calling it a love star. It was a star in the black void pumping out love. I'm like, that's perfect. It's exactly what it is. Mm-hmm. The love star. And I know that sounds cliche, but that's what it was. And then the next words that really nailed it for me was when it called it the liquid molten golden white light.
Wow, the liquid molten golden.
Liquid molten golden white light. And it was moving with the molten grace of liquidity. Oh. I knew I had what I'd been looking for over 3 decades, well over 3 decades. Yeah. And I started applying these principles and these instructions to my life and to daily practice. Practice builds spiritual momentum. And so I'm telling my friend Rosalind about this, and she knew her baby was going to be a boy and that his name was Noah, but he's unborn. So she's working on me. We're looking at each other. I'm on my back. She's working on my hip and my leg. And all of a sudden, divine, because we were anxious, both of us with some anxieties of things we were going through. And I think that what came through was clearly divine peace, flat out. Remember I told you the signatures had certain intent? This was intended to give us peace. And I think it had another intention too, because when it hit me, it cut off my voice. It cut off, I had no ability to move other than my head flopped back down on the table. I had it raised up a little bit so I could look at Rosalind. It just dropped back down on the table. And I had tears going down the side of my eyes. And this energy was roaring through me like a billion freight trains. God, it felt awesome. It was so good. And I couldn't move. I couldn't talk. I couldn't do anything. I just laid there going, another thing of, wow, all you can do is experience, right? That's what was happening, just like when I was in the light, except I can see the room I'm in. And when it's finally subsided, I wiped the tears away and I raised my eyes and I raised my head up and I looked at Rosalind. I said, did you see, did you feel that? And she goes, uh-huh. And Noah did too.
Wow. Yeah.
That happened. And the other thing that happened was about a year later, I was being interviewed by some authorities, which I won't get into because it's an open case that's being investigated. But when I went into their spaces, I had to walk through their metal detector while wearing that flight suit, because I told them I was going to be wearing that, and I did that for a reason, so they'd know who I am. And tons of metal on me, steel-toed flight boots. You know, I had metal everywhere, ink pens, dog tags. I had stuff everywhere. I should have lit that metal detector up. This is an FBI metal detector. Should have never not worked, right? Walked through it like I was a ghost.
Wow.
They looked at each other. There's two of them, two investigators that I was speaking with and being interviewed that day. And they looked at me. And then they looked just, you know, like what? and I told them, so I'm going to light. I told them everything I had on me. This thing's going to light up like a Christmas tree. I had my cheap garrison hat on, military hat with the chief petty officer metal emblem on there. I mean, I had metal everywhere. And nothing. Like I was a ghost. And so they look at each other. And one of them says, is it on? You're like, is the machine on? She goes, I thought it was. And she goes and walks through it herself. She's not even carrying a purse. She's just in normal street clothes. Lights up as soon as she walks through.
Yeah.
Before I went to that meeting, I said a prayer and asked for God to give me a sign that these people would be open to hearing about my spiritual reasons for why everything that's happened and why I did what I did and how come I got this far. Mm. And I should have never met them in the first place, but how it all happened. And just amazing. So amazing how it all falls into place. So it's just been an amazing ride. I know God's real. I stood there, stood in the presence of my Creator. And what my passion is now is helping other veterans and anybody else that's had an experience so that they don't have to struggle like that. We're calling it the gap in care. And it's for anybody that's had these experiences to learn that they are not crazy. They should have been validated in the beginning, not rejected or told they're hallucinating or told that they need to be on drugs or they're psychotic or all that. None of that is what I needed. I just needed to be validated, and I'd have been a whole lot better off. But I didn't get that. I got rejected. So that's called a moral injury. Okay. And it has lifelong impact. And so that's what my passion is. And that's what God has me doing, is to help others with that so they don't have to live that way. Because it's too hard. There's a whole lot easier way.
How life would have gone if you'd been accepted right from the very beginning.
I know.
And how different that path would have been. So much more healing, and would have been a very different path, wouldn't it?
I believe it would have been. And that's why I do what I do. And just want to help other people.
I think that the out-of-body experience would have happened without the near-death experience. When the plane you nearly crashed, you came within milliseconds of crashing. Do you think the second part of that journey would have happened?
No, because I didn't have a reason. Well, maybe. I don't know. Because it was just a genuine gratitude for having seen that miracle. But I don't know if I would have felt that way had I not had the out-of-body experience first to be in that. I think that light changed me somehow so that I was more, open to things like that. I don't know how to put it into words, but it changed me somehow. Yeah.
Okay. Very interesting. So then, what about your life today? Do you have any practice? Do you meditate? Are you talk about
meditate, and daily I do my decrees in my book.
Yeah, you talk about these books.
Real quick, there's the Unveiled Mysteries. I don't know if you can see that or not. It's called the Unveiled Mysteries, but the books are just hardback, green covers. That's the I Am Discourses.
Yeah, that one's easier to see. We'll put links for these that people can find them.
Yeah, I'll send them to you. Look at this.
That's that one. The Ascended Master Instruction. Tell us.
Yes. Okay. Well, listen, there's 20 of these books, okay, and they're powerful. And I look at these books as, I had a flight manual when I flew in the Navy. You had to know all this stuff in here, right? It's our Bible, there's schematics, there's all kinds of stuff, procedures, systems knowledge. You had to know all that stuff. Why? Because if you made a mistake or didn't do it right, you and your crewmates could lose their lives. So it's about life. That book was about life. All right. How to live in while doing your job in that plane. But these books are also about life and how life really works and where the energy for life comes from and how we are using it, and it's gifted to us and it's constantly being given to us, whether we're aware of it or not. And there's a whole lot more in there than that. All these different ascended masters that are waiting to help us, and the call compelled the answer. The reason it compelled the answer is because of unconditional love, and their love for us is so immense that they have to come answer because that's their mission. And how it happens is what's really interesting to watch happen.
Are you able to tap into this whenever you like now after doing some stuff?
No, it's, when the powerful things happen like that, it's not, I don't have any control over that. I don't have any control. When God chooses to make a move, that's totally God's choice. Yeah. What I am able to do is I can feel my third eye when I meditate. And when I'm praying for someone, it's pouring out, and we are light too. Okay. There's a light within each one of us that is a spark of our Creator. That's why we're children of God. Okay. Yeah. That spark that's within your soul is connected at all times to all that is, whether we are aware of it or not. And so everybody agrees that prayer is important, right? And we pray and we believe that it goes out and it does something, right? Guess what? I've learned as far as, and what these books are teaching me too, is that all thought is prayer.
Yeah.
You realize that or not? So be careful what you pray for all day long, because the call compels the answer. And because we activate that energy in the universe, it's going to give back to us exactly what it thinks we need to progress our spiritual growth, as long as it is within the divine plan of our Creator. If it's our own egotistical, self-centered stuff, it's going to crash.
Mm. And so anybody can tap into this, can't they? Anybody at all.
Yeah. It's a personal connection. And it takes practice, and it takes effort, and it takes structure. And these books provide that. They're awesome.
Wow, Tony Woody, thank you so much for coming on and sharing that. You can hear it in your voice. You can see it in your face as you're sharing, recounting that. These experiences. There's more than one of them.
My pleasure. But that's part of why these after effects need to be talked about, because they're real. They matter, and they're affecting lives. Not just the people that had them, the people around them too, their whole families. It's affecting a lot of lives, and it needs to be understood better.
That's definitely something we need to look into more, isn't it? Have some more discussions around. Yeah. Tony, thank you for joining us. And
my pleasure.
I'd like to chat to you further. This isn't the end for us.
No.
Thanks for joining me for this episode of the Let's Talk Near Death podcast show. If you've enjoyed it, please share it with your friends, tell people about it. I'd love to get these messages out there. You can also connect with me on Facebook at Kirsty Salisbury Official, and you can subscribe to receive updates for new episodes as they come about. I'm Kirsty Salisbury, and this is Let's Talk Near Death.